Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric. I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 83rd episode this week. We'll briefly recap the Patriots loss of the Colts a couple weeks ago, but we'll also be talking a lot about the news of the day, news of the week of Bill Belichick signing to be the next head coach of the University of North Carolina Tar Heels. And then we'll also briefly talk about some news around the NFL and then preview the Patriots' upcoming game versus the Arizona Cardinals. Uh, as a reminder, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter/X at Pat's 300 Level Pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So, Kevin, I know going into the Patriots' last game versus the Colts before the bye, we were saying this is realistically one of their last chances of winning a game this season. They were 4-13 last year. They were 3-9 going into the last game, 3-9 going into the last game. And if you win one more, you at least match what you were last year. You'd at least want to win two to improve upon it. But with the schedule coming up, it looked like this is one of the last games they could win. Cardinals are on a bit of a losing streak now, so maybe the Cardinals too. But don't want to go too much into it. The Colts game, since it was about a week and a half ago. But what were your thoughts watching this pretty much typical
Shit
game of
show.
the Patriots of the season? Yeah.
Yeah, again, yeah, like you said, it's been the same song and dance this whole entire year where what we've seen, where the defense can't make stops what it needs to. The offense goes way too conservative at the end when they don't need to.
Yeah.
And there's coaching mistakes left and right between this game. They don't have a grasp on the game. Um, and then you just see it where going into the half where they got way too conservative and they tried to sell for a field goal and then they missed the 25-yard field goal. And then towards the end of the game, they got an interception. All they needed to go was what, like 30 yards, I think it was, to try and
Yeah.
attempt a field goal to put it up two scores. And they did what you expect them to do, run, and then have a third and long and try and pass. And of course, they know it's a pass, so they are able to get pressure and break that up and have him try and run for his life and get sacked. So, it's the same thing every single week.
Yeah.
And it is basically turned into like a male bashing because of like what's been like. And again, we
Yeah.
don't want to. Again, we don't hate male.
I don't. You can go ahead.
Um, and I would like this. I would rather this team be competitive and winning games. I don't want to be coming on here every week saying what a bad job he's been doing, what a bad job this whole organization's turned into.
Yeah.
I want to be watching success and watch at least the thing going into this year, which we said was that we knew that they weren't going to win that many games. Um, but we wanted to see an improvement over time because this year
Yeah.
was, and we said they realistically they should be winning more games than last year. Neither of us predicted they would, but realistically, even watching them, they should be based on what the schedule is, what they're doing, and they should at least be improving. You see that with successful teams that go from being having a poor record to being successful afterwards. You look at the Lions with Dan Campbell, who Mayo compares himself to, where yeah they had a bad year that year, but they were starting to improve towards the end of the year, and they at least showed an identity. And what's the Patriots' identity this year? There is not one. You don't know
Yeah.
what they are. They
You know what they are. They're inconsistent. They
Mhm.
sloppy turnovers, penalties,
There's no
pre-snap
good
penalties.
identity for this team.
Yeah.
And you look at going back to the Patriots back in '93 with Bledsoe, where they ended up, yeah, they didn't have a great record, but they started to win some games toward the end of the season and show you something. They're not
I think
showing
that was
anything right
94.
now. I think it was '93.
He was a rookie 93 and then 94, I thought was when they won like their last six games, something. Oh,
No, it was '93.
okay.
But um, they're not showing much, really.
Yeah.
And you can go through other successful teams. The 49ers, when Jimmy went there, they ended up winning. I don't know what it was. It was probably 4 or 5 games in the row, and you could see them building towards something.
Yeah.
We're not seeing that now. This is a really big stretch for them coming up the last 4 games of the season because they need to show something, or
Yeah.
else God only knows what's on the table. It's not getting Mayo's not going to get fired, but like the rest of the staff. No, I don't think anyone else is safe.
Yeah. And
And
again, with the schedule, they kind of screw themselves being 3-10 at this point where
you
you
have the
have
easiest
four.
schedule based off of DVOA in the entire season for the all the games of, up until now. They have the hardest schedule for the
Yeah.
last four games.
So it's unrealistic that they're gonna maybe they beat the Cardinals or maybe they sneak out a win versus the Bills if the
Hmm.
Bills rest their starters last week of the season if they don't have to bye.
Hmm.
But realistically, I'm not expecting a win these last four
Yeah, you
games.
just want to
But
see
you
them be
still want
competitive, and you
exactly
want to see them be
competitive,
cleaned
good
up,
plays,
not
make
penalties.
yeah. You
And
want to see
so,
the younger players making plays where
mhm.
maybe Paul somehow gets out of the rut that he's been in, or Michael when starts playing more consistently. Kyle Duggar gets back into form of what he was before, especially with Peppers being
Mhm.
back.
Bryce Barringer doesn't have touchbacks.
Yeah. Or
Um,
60-yard line drives down the middle that are
yeah.
returned for touchdowns.
So it's again, I'm not expecting or looking for them to be winning these upcoming games.
Yeah.
But the Cardinals, realistically, you have a
You
chance.
could. Yeah.
Everywhere else, you've got no shot. But you should at least be
Maybe
competitive.
maybe the Chargers if they use the same game plan against Herbert that they did the
Hmm.
last three games because it's the same most of the same defensive staff, even though Bill
Hmm.
and Steve were putting in the game plan, a lot of the staff were still in place that knew how to shut down Justin Herbert for him to have the three worst games of his career to be against this defense.
Yeah. So again, I don't think there's anything left to kind of recap from that game. It's just kind of more of the same.
Yeah, the other thing too
Um,
is like you said, I know some people talk about it, but at the when they got the ball back after the interception and you saw them running it and throw. I said when they ran it on first down, I was like, they're playing not to lose, and they're going to lose this game because they're trying to run the clock down when there's still 7 minutes left in the game. It's one thing if it's 3 minutes or something, you're trying to get it down so they don't have much time to complete a drive, but with 7 minutes to go and the other team having, I believe most or all of their timeouts, like really running it what's taking 2 minutes off the clock really going to do
mhm.
if you haven't really been running too successfully.
Yep. No, agreed. And then to top it all off, we haven't really been on air since this, but the to try and attempt a 68-yard field goal again, that's not what lost them the game because
Yeah.
realistically they were going to probably lose it either way.
Yep.
But to give yourself no chance, it was I think just insane.
Yeah.
Where again, it was a 60-yard field goal in 30-degree weather
Yep.
going against the wind. There, it's never been done in history. Why do you think that's going to happen now
Yeah.
of
It,
all
it's
days?
it's one thing if you're playing in Denver or if you're in what's that place? Mexico City, like
Hmm.
when Gostkowski made that field goal. Or if you're in Miami where it's 95 and
Yeah.
humid,
Or if
or
you're in a
it
dome, like,
dome
because you see, like
maybe.
Aubrey Beal, he would probably be able to hit that, like
Yeah.
down there. And you see some of these
Or
other
if you have the wind
kickers.
behind your back going
Hmm.
with you or something. Again, the wind might cause it to go left or right, but again, it might help you get the distance.
Hmm.
But in against the wind in 30-degree weather outside in New England with the crazy wind directions from the scoreboard,
Hmm.
it made absolutely no sense.
Yeah. And then some people saying, oh, it only fell like 2 yards short, but that's where it ended up landing. That means that it
Yeah.
was even shorter than that. It
It
didn't
was
have
like
the height.
seven, you needed like 7 more yards for it
Yeah.
to go through the goalpost at 10 plus feet.
Hmm. So it just another thing where you're like, I don't know. And then for him saying that he didn't know the percentages going into it, like he wasn't sure what the percentages were, and that's what he just felt like doing. You should know what the percentages are before you attempt that. You have
Yeah.
a guy in your headset that should be telling you, oh, this is the chance if we do this, this is what we do that. And to say you don't know what that is, it's zero. It's
Yeah.
never been done. Like,
And again, if you saw him making it from that in warm-ups, where you saw him make it from 65 or 70 going that
hmm.
direction, okay, maybe that gives you comfort. But I don't think he's ever tried a 70-yard field
Yeah.
goal in
And
warm-ups.
then other thing too is you've seen multiple Hail Marys actually completed this year.
Yeah.
You saw Jaden Daniels, you saw Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if there's anyone else, but they've at least happened.
Yeah.
But again, I don't want to get all caught up on this because it wasn't the reason why they lost the game. It's just another coaching mistake I think that
Yeah.
they have. On a long kind of laundry list. All right, so we're gonna do three up, three down for the season thus far, rather than doing of the game, just because We have really done that kind of halfway point yet. And it's the bye week. So I've got May, Gonzalez, and White. I think those are your kind of three best players that have been playing right now. May basically is the offense right now. Everything is kind of off of him, and a lot of it is off structure with him. Gonzalez has been that shutdown corner that you need, and then White has actually cleaned up a lot of kind of his earlier mistakes of kind of being over pursuing and being a little aggressive in the pass rush lane. So I would go with them as your top three.
I have the same exact in that order. Maybe Gonzalez over May, but for how well May's doing, considering how bad the offensive line is, how bad the wide receivers are, I think you have to go those three in some order. I guess May number one, but you
Hmm.
could go either May or Gonzalez.
Yep. Three down. I've got coaching. That wouldn't be any surprise to anyone. Duggar has been really bad this year.
Yeah.
And I think part of it though too is that they're playing him more out of position than what he is. He's
Yeah.
a box safety. He hasn't been great in coverage ever.
Mhm.
And you're really getting him exposed there. A lot of the big plays this year have been when he's been around the ball. Polk has been a complete and utter disaster
Yeah.
for a second round pick for their top wide receiver pick that they have. It wasn't something that either of us expected. I don't think I know I didn't
No,
expect it.
I didn't. I
We
had huge expectations for him
yeah,
this
we
year. I had
both
him
thought
as,
that he would be that safety pick where everyone was saying this too, where he's not going to be that bust flame out pick. He's a safe guy. He may not be anything flash. He may not be great, but he's not going to be bad. And he's
I think I
been
predicted him
bad.
for like 80 catches, 800 plus
Yeah.
yards. But even though I did want Ladd at 34 when they
Hmm.
were at pick 34, I really like Ladd going into the offseason or going into the draft. And of course, they trade Ladd and the starting cornerback for the Chargers for Polk and Baker.
Yep. And then honorable mention, just because every single week, me and Eric text about this. Bryce Barringer, he has
Yeah.
not been the same as he was last year. He's either, like you said earlier, either booming it right down the middle, like 60, 70 yards, just showing off his leg, and then it gets returned for like 40 yards. Or he's having touchbacks, or he's shanking it. So he's
Yeah.
just not been the same. And he's actually been costing them a lot of field position when
Yeah.
they really need it.
Yeah. For me, coaching is an obvious and offensive line is an obvious. So I'm putting coaching aside if we're just talking players. I'd say a for me is number one just because he's had a pretty bad year. Part of it might not be his fault just because they've had different people next to him all season, all camp. They've been playing him right tackle, right guard again all season and all camp, not giving him the consistency. But still, if he's your top offensive lineman, he should be playing much, much, much better than he's been playing, where he was supposed to be penciled in as your right tackle or at least one of the best guards in football, and he's just been average at best. He's obviously your best offensive lineman, but he's not who you signed him to be and who he's been in past years. Number two is Duggar, just like everything you said. And then number three is Polk. Polk might be even higher, but yeah, I'd say probably Polk. Sorry, I put this out of order, but Polk number one, Owenyu number two, and Duggar number three.
All right. All right. So the biggest news really out of this, Bill to UNC, not something
Yep.
that either of us, really anyone
Nope.
expected. When the original tweet came out, I don't know, it was less than a week ago, I think at this point.
Thursday or
Maybe
Friday.
maybe it was a week ago. I was getting ready to call out the two journalists that had reported it, saying that they're nobodies, no one should trust
Yeah.
these guys, until it's like reported by Schefter, and that they're full of shit. And I would have been completely wrong, so I'm glad I
Yeah.
didn't tweet that out.
Yeah. I
The
almost
only thing
texted
I
you
think I
because
did tweet was just like, can we get the actual source for this? Because no one actually, they were
yeah,
citing the
inside
organization
UNC or
inside
something.
UNC, but they never actually had an article that had that
Hmm.
firsthand. Um, and then eventually ended up having one afterwards. But wasn't something I thought. I thought too that he was using this as leverage
Oh
to
yeah,
try and
100%.
say that, hey, I have this job available. If you're an NFL team, you got to start talking to me soon, or else I'm going here.
Yeah.
Um, and the more stuff has come out, it seems like, well, it definitely wasn't because he ended up
Yeah.
taking the job. And then two, it seems like he was dead set that he actually wanted this and wasn't using this as leverage.
Yeah.
And he had actually started thinking about going to college months ago,
Yeah.
which was also a shock because it didn't get any sort of inclination that he was thinking about this. And I think the big thing where I'd never actually read the full book because I'm terrible at reading. I know you
Education
have
of a
The
Coach,
Education of
the
Coach. They
best book
actually
I've ever read.
mentioned in the near the I think it was at the end of it that
Yeah,
he was saying he wouldn't be surprised if how Bill ends his career is coaching in college.
yeah.
Um, the book said an Ivy League school, but I can't really actually picture Bill coaching in an Ivy League school. But I would
Yeah.
have thought Navy of all
But
places.
also like back then, like that's before there was NIL and things like that. So
Hmm.
you're just coaching the best players or people that there's no academic scholarships, there's no
Hmm.
athletic scholarships per se.
Hmm.
There's academic or athletic positions you can give out, but not scholarship per se. So
Hmm.
I guess Ivy League made sense 20 years ago, but
Hmm. So yeah, I think this took all of us as a shock.
yeah,
Pretty much
I've
everyone. I don't think there's a single person out there that said, "Oh, I saw this coming."
yeah.
Um, and it's interesting just reading. There's a bunch of articles out lately, the last day, last couple hours actually, that kind of break this down more. So Wickersham, and gotta go look up this
The
guy's
thing with
name
Wickersham
because
too is like it was a good article, but I have to be honest with myself and with you guys. I've always thought Wickersham is half full of shit. So I can't say 100% everything he's saying is true, but based on what he's saying, it sounds like it's coming directly from Mike Lombardi. So it probably is partially true, at least from Lombardi's perspective.
yeah.
Uh, but again,
Then there's
like
an.
you said,
Oh, go ahead.
I've always the last couple of years, especially like when it seemed like Bill was going to get canned, I always thought he was still going to go to the NFL. But part of me always wondered, his dad was a college coach, and when he graduated college, he was planning on going into college to coach, and Ernie was planning on going into the NFL, and they were going to go their separate ways coaching. And I always wondered, would Bill ever want to go into college to follow, like he grew up only around the college game. Again,
Hmm.
Naval Academy is different than other like bigger schools like Ohio State, etc. But I always wondered that. Again, I never thought he would because I thought he just loves the NFL so much. But it's interesting to see him kind of go down those routes and listening to him at that press conference today. It made sense why he went this route, especially with the college game becoming more professional or pro
Hmm.
style in
Yep.
later years because of the NIL.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely made a lot more sense and it made me feel a little bit better listening to the press conference and then also
Yeah,
reading those articles. So the Wickersham one, the
Ollie.
Connolly,
Yeah.
he goes by Ollie on Twitter or X. He had a really good one as well. He's actually been the one that's basically been breaking the news before everyone else. That's why I was
Yeah.
gonna say there's some nobody that's that's doing this, and then he's
And
breaking
he
it
got a
before
tip
Schefter.
from, yeah, he got a tip from someone in the Belichick camp months ago that this was potentially going to happen before
Hmm.
Mac Brown was even canned. Well,
Which I
which
think
makes
is
it
insane.
100%, and it's 100% Lombardi because that's something
Yeah.
Lombardi would do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I texted Eric as I was once because he said a former, and I think he said former NFL coach though.
No,
Unless,
he said, I thought he said a Belichick, someone that's going to be on Belichick's staff.
oh, soon be a part of coaching staff. I
Yeah.
figured when he said coaching staff, he meant an actual coach.
Hmm.
Um,
And I could be wrong. It might not be Lombardi, but that's 100% his
yeah, I could
style.
definitely picture Lombardi doing that because he said like, do you ever read this book, Rough Magic?
And
And let me
the
know
book
what
is
you.
about Bill Walsh
Mhm.
going from the 49ers back to college at
Yeah.
Stanford.
And they said, "Let me know what you think." And that's definitely something Lombardi, because Lombardi thinks he's in the mafia. Basically, you look at him; he's got his buttons all the way down. He's got his hair coming out. He's got his chain. He's got a
The pinky ring.
pinky ring. I think he's got a bracelet too. He's got, I think, the Satrialis thing in the background and one of his things for the Sopranos. So he definitely wants to be putting out these weird, like, puzzle messages that aren't like directs, and you got to try and figure out what it means. I could definitely see him being the one doing that to try and make it seem like this is like the smart, clever guy, and you got to figure out what the thing is.
Yeah.
It's pretty like direct once you realize it, like what
Yeah.
happened, like
But
and what the
also
whole storyline
it's
is.
so obscure that no one would have ever believed Bill, not only to college would be the
Hmm.
thing, but Bill to UNC at an ACC school.
Hmm.
And again, I think
Um,
that's kind of the genius behind Bill doing this because A, he gets to build his own program from the ground up. It's not a school that's complete shit like how Dion took over Colorado,
hmm.
where they were the worst team in football, but it's a school that's 6-6. They've had some mild success and able to bring in quarterbacks, which is big in college football now. But it's also a school that he has ties to, and it's a school that in the ACC, they haven't won an ACC championship in 45 years. So they're not a big football school. If he's able to turn them around where they even make it to the college football playoffs, they're in
Hmm.
contention. That's a huge thing on him, let alone if they win a national championship. That's going to make him look tremendous versus if he waited for Ryan Day to get fired and he took over Ohio State, which I thought he was using the UNC job as leverage of maybe I'll go to college and if I don't get an NFL job and I'll go
Hmm.
to Ohio State if Ryan Day gets fired, if they get blown out week one of the playoffs, and I'll take over and establish this program. But no, this is showing that A, he'll have more patience because he's at a smaller program. And it's not expected to win right away or even ever just because of how small the ACC is compared to what the bigger programs are now. I know Clemson won a few years ago, but it makes a ton of sense when you think of everything. You think of his ties to the college with his dad coaching there previously. Um, it's sad to see Bill not in the NFL anymore, not getting that wins record, especially with Andy Reid on his tails of potentially passing him, which kind of pisses me off. And it makes me more pissed at Robert Kraft every day that this had to go down the way it did. But it at least for me as a football fan, I've never most people in New England, you're not a big college football fan because college football in New England has sucked a lot ever. Minus BC in like '07 with Matt Ryan when they're number one. But I actually have a rooting interest in college football now with Bill and this year a little bit with O'Brien with BC, but I wasn't like huge into it. But now I can say I'll be rooting for UNC.
Yep. No, great. I think the other thing which I should have probably thought about more is just Bill's love of history and
Yeah.
being kind of sentimental about those sorts of things and how he really likes things from the past and whatnot. So um and because he grew up like at first at UNC where his dad was, where I just never
Initially,
really,
initially at Vanderbilt and then UNC.
yeah. Um But I think really that's when his first memories would have been, though.
Yeah,
I think he
yeah,
was probably
yeah.
too young for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, he was.
Um,
He also had bad memories of how that whole ordeal went down at Vanderbilt. But
mhm.
it's in David Halverson's book. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. Education of a Coach.
Yep. So yeah, Bill's kind of like love for history and just I think it kind of really completes the circle for him, where that's
Yeah,
where he kind of first grew up and before Navy, kind of learning football and kind of end his career. It's kind of a poetic thing.
yeah.
I think that the two kind of ways to really for him to have ended it would have that's a really good storyline. Another one would just be a different like franchise where they're a big like one of the old ones where like Green Bay or
The Bears who
the
haven't won in
Bears
ever.
or like the Giants or
The
one of those kind of
Lions, like I know they're doing well now, but
hmm.
if he was able to bring a championship to the Lions,
Yeah, I just think one of those like old historic teams, which
yeah,
he loves. Like
Packers,
he talks on and on whenever they go to play at Lambeau, just what the field means to him and like in history because he's a
yeah,
big NFL history buff and football buff. So I guess we should have realized that a little bit more into it. It's gonna be really interesting to see what he does. The way that the kind of NIL and transfers work, he can flip this program overnight.
yeah.
And it's gonna be
Indiana sort
really.
of did this past year where they've always been a basketball school, even though basketball hasn't been
Hmm.
as great recently, but they're now, I think, top 15 in NIL, and they're
Hmm.
in the college football playoffs pretty
Yeah.
much overnight.
So it'll be interesting to see how well that they could do, and it's just another cement to his legacy if he can somehow win, or at least get into the playoffs, and if he can somehow win a championship, where it's
Yeah.
not on the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's not.
Again, before you would say it wasn't going to happen with an ACC school because just the
Yeah.
way that the playoffs worked, everything like that. But
That and also before NIL and transfers, where you pretty much had to have a great recruiting class,
hmm.
and that takes about 3 to 4 years by the time the people you recruit end
Hmm.
up becoming starters.
Yeah.
Uh, it would have been tough, but now it's
Yeah, now you
realistic.
can pretty much
Yeah,
when you look at Dion's first year, I think he had 50 new guys
he did.
on the team.
50 new guys, and they went
Um,
from the worst team in college football to they only won 4 games, but they were competitive in some of the losses, and they also beat previous national champion runner-up
mhm.
in TCU,
Yeah.
which again, thinking only 4 wins, but that Colorado team the year before, Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl was saying that they pretty much told scouts not to watch whenever teams would play Colorado because you can't evaluate the talent of the other teams and other players because of how bad Colorado was.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do, and how well they do, and I'm really looking forward to follow them. It
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier too that he's in I guess really any of the schools, but the ACC, we pretty much all the games you get to see on ESPN. They have the ACC channel,
Yeah.
and then they also play on the CW as well. So I know I've watched a lot of BC this year. Yeah, UNC I actually watched a few games of this year just because they've been on, but will be kind of interesting to see there. All right, so 3 year
Good
deal.
colors too. I
Yeah.
like the Tar Heel blue or
hmm
Carolina blue,
Carolina
whatever you
blue, it's
call
called. Um, yeah, nice kind of color uniform. And again, he got a 3 year deal for 30 million guaranteed.
Oh,
He it
one
can't.
thing before we get into this too,
Yeah.
which I think both of us were saying, why the hell would Bill again go to this where he has a chance where he either we were thinking either A, he's going to have an opt-out clause where if an NFL team comes running or calling, he can leave. Again, that's obviously not the case because his contract that you'll get into has a $10 million buyout where he'll have to pay $10 million this first year. After that, it's only $1 million. So kind of
Technically, it's
he
actually
could leave after
he could
that.
leave after this year too.
Yeah.
No, in this year, June 1st or June 5th of
Yeah. But
2025.
again,
Realistically, you're not going to be a head coach. You're not going to go into it and start a program
yeah.
after the draft. So realistically, that's not going to
So
happen. But
we
technically, it could.
thought, yeah, we thought either A, there was going to be an opt-out clause, or B, he did all his homework and what did the back channels to talk to different owners and found out that either A, there wasn't an opening available that he wanted. Whereas we were thinking maybe the Jaguars, but maybe he didn't believe in Trevor Lawrence or he didn't like the Tony Khan,
Hmm.
his involvement, or there were teams he wasn't interested in, but he found out from the owners that they were going to go in a different direction. So we were thinking one of those, but it seems how invested he's been in college football. It seems like for the past few months, this is something that he was actually thinking realistic possibility and possibly seeking out.
Yeah,
And
and it
again,
seems
again,
like
if it wasn't UNC, if it was another school, I don't know if he makes that decision just because of it seems like he really loves the area. He loves the historic family ties that he has to the program. If it
yep.
was, say, Marshall or West Virginia, even where
hmm
it's another similar caliber school who's had more success in recent years than UNC. I don't know if he makes that jump, but
Yep. And then the other thing is where he can establish an entire new program
yeah,
where they're changing everything. It's not like he's just going to some place, you're going to be the coach. They're
yeah.
changing their whole kind of outlook of what they want this football program to be. And they're investing a lot into it more than they have in the past. So, and
The
again, they want,
NIL money jumped from 4 million this year to 20 million next year. So
yeah.
that in and of itself by 4 times.
The coaching staff, I think their coaching staff salaries is in the top four in college football. And then they also have a separate salary amount for the GM side of the ball too. Um, and then the other thing I think too, where it was mentioned, I think it was Ollie's article. It might have been Wickersham's. They're very
Yeah,
similar. But I think it was Ollie because he had mentioned about Josh and Patricia and them all going on Zoom calls.
that was
Uh,
Wickersham.
oh, was that Wickersham?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, there was so that they had mentioned that article that were trying to dissect what openings there would be and which ones would be good openings, and it kind of really turned out that they didn't really like any of the openings that they could see just based on some of the organizational issues there where the Bears that they didn't like that Ryan Pohl was still going to be there and what his kind of draft outlook was and
And then
what
also they thought the Bears were going to go on the offensive side of the ball too instead of
exactly
defense.
yeah they
They
thought they
they
were going to go with
thought
Ben
team
Johnson.
wise the team itself, Bears
Was
were
the
an
best
attractive
actually.
option.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Bears they were saying was actually the most attractive option, but they weren't going to go for a defensive minded coach. They wanted an offensive minded coach to
yeah,
help with Williams. And they also didn't like Ryan Paul, who was staying on
yeah,
board. And pretty much everyone else that there wasn't really anyone opening that they thought may have opened, and then the other ones that you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going
yeah.
to happen at the playoffs if something happens where they flame out like the Eagles. The Bengals aren't going to fire Taylor because they're too cheap. Are the Bills going to fire McDermott if he loses another game by just a coaching decision in the playoffs? I think they should.
Yep.
Will they do it? Probably not. Um, and then the Bucks with Todd Bowles, with what's going to happen there. So there's just a lot of uncertainty, and to
Yeah.
try and just wait it out, you may not have this UNC opportunity,
Yeah.
or any other college opportunity. So I think kind
And
of grass.
also, he got the terms that he wanted with this
Hmm.
UNC. There's nothing to say other programs would give him the amount of, I think control is the wrong word,
I think
but
resources would be
yeah,
the right word for it. So the amount,
resources and structure.
hmm where it's not total control by him because he's
Yeah.
not the one that's doing all this GM. I don't think he wants to do all the recruitment and all
Yeah.
this sort of stuff. That's why he's putting it out. That's why he specifically wanted a GM position, so that way he wouldn't have to do all of that work.
Yeah. But he
And
put someone that he trusts in that position to
hmm
make sure that they're building the team the way he wants it, even if he
yeah,
doesn't necessarily have that stamp of,
hmm
oh, you're gonna recruit this person this week, etc.
yeah. Mm.
They'll do it collaboratively,
Hmm.
but
It's all on the same vision.
yeah,
There.
exactly.
It's a different type of collaboration than it
Yep.
is up in one Foxborough way.
Yep.
So again, 3-year deal guaranteed. It could technically go up to 5 years. The last 2 years aren't guaranteed. Like we were talking about before, he has a $10 million buyout if he were to leave before June of 2025.
Which again, he
Um,
has the money, so
And
theoretically,
usually with the way the buyouts work is that whoever team hires you usually
yeah,
pays them too, so it doesn't
yeah.
really matter. Um, and then it goes down to 1 million after that. That really the thought that we both had there too, why they would make it 1 million versus 10 million for after that is realistically, if he coaches this year, he's not going to be leaving to go to the NFL because I just don't see any team hiring a 74-year-old guy.
And
Um,
I also don't see Bill abandoning a job that he started, especially
yeah.
with the military style life that his father
Hmm.
instilled in him. I don't see him doing that.
Yeah.
So it makes
Um,
sense to have the options built in place, but I don't see him doing
hmm
that.
Yeah, and you just even look at with him this year with the Patriots, or no, last year with the Patriots, where he was gracious enough to let Kraft do that, kind of what Kraft call the classy like mutual parting ways. If Bill really wanted to, he could have made him publicly fire him,
Yeah.
and then said, "I'm not going to be stepping aside."
But I also
Um,
don't think Bill would want that either, where that public firing too. I don't think
yeah.
that would look good on him too.
hmm all right. So then, like we said, Mike Lombardi is the GM for the team. There's another report that Ben McDaniel's, Josh McDaniel's brother, is going to be on staff as well. Likely, probably as the offensive coordinator. He's right now
Yeah.
the Texans passing coordinator.
Yeah.
Um, so go
I
this.
didn't know McDaniels had a brother until I watched McDaniels on Edelman's podcast this summer and then found
I
out he
didn't
was
even
the wide
realize that he
receiver.
had a brother off of that. He mentioned it there.
He did. He said how
Oh.
his brother was when they were talking about Stroud, he was saying how
hmm
his brother was working with him. He was the wide receiver coach at the time with the Texans.
Oh, I had no idea. I missed that part.
Yeah.
So then
You're
the
the
other
second
thing,
person I talked to that watched that episode and missed that part.
and then the other big kind of caveat too. Bill mentioned there's gonna be other NFL talent going on staff. And it made it sound like there's a lot of NFL talent going there, so it'll be interesting to see who that is. I would imagine
I'm assuming
Steve.
all previous coaches, like not all, but previous coaches because of the ties to Bill and his
Yeah, yeah. So I
ties
would think
to
Steve Belichick is definitely one of them. No one has ever actually reported if the succession plan is actually part of the final deal. Um, that was made. The beginning part was that they were saying that Steve would be the
yeah.
successor. I don't
I
know if
think
that
if
was
it was, it
ever.
would have been reported. So it's probably
Hmm
not set in stone, but it's probably verbally agreed upon that
hmm
if this goes well,
Yeah.
Steve can take over, and then like Bill would say like when I'm ready to step down, if Steve wants the job,
Hmm.
I can help mentor him the first couple of years. Like I feel
Yeah.
like it's more verbal instead of written in contract because of what happened with Mayo to him, and then also
Hmm.
what happened with him and Bill Parcells and the Jets. So
Yeah.
he might not actually want it in writing.
Yeah. And I'd probably imagine Brian's probably gonna go down there.
I don't
And
know. I was actually wondering that because I feel like again I know they have one of the most money for coaching staff in college football, but I feel like the money's probably less in college than the
hmm.
NFL, and also maybe he wants to coach in the NFL versus college.
Yeah. And then the other two thing, just family being up here. He's
Yeah,
lived here his entire life.
yeah,
So there's a chance he just may not want to leave here.
yeah,
He may not have that option after a year or two,
yeah.
but we'll see about that. So that could be another option why he might go down there, because it could be thinking his days are numbered.
Yeah.
Not that they should
Also
be,
interesting.
but
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if any other coaches on the current staff leave to go to UNC too.
hmm
Mike Pellegrino is one that makes sense because he's been there so long.
hmm.
Maybe if Covington gets fired,
Yeah,
maybe he
would he
would go
bring him
there.
down and kind of
Or would he want to stay in the NFL too? There's two aspects. Again, I don't think Covington will leave the job willingly. It's more if he gets fired,
hmm
which I think one of the coordinators is going to have to because of the bad results this year
hmm.
and how publicly they've been in support of Van Pelt makes it seem like maybe it would be Covington, even though I don't know if it's fully his fault for
Yeah,
how bad it's been. But
yeah. And then Freddie Kitchens, Bill already mentioned, is the first person that is technically still going to be on staff
yeah, the
afterwards,
first
and he
hire,
was
which
a former NFL coach as well.
yeah, he was the
Um,
Browns head
I
coach, and he's the interim coach for UNC when they coach in the Fenway Bowl. Is that what it's called? In
think so.
December?
Yep, the game that's at Fenway.
Yeah,
Um, so it'll be interesting to see what other kind of coaches there. Patricia is probably going to be on staff doing
yeah.
something. God knows what. I honestly have no idea if Steve's going to be the defensive coordinator
I think it
and
would be like the Ernie
Lombardi.
Adams role
Yeah,
if
that would
Patricia
have to
goes,
be.
but I can also see Patricia becoming Ben Johnson's defensive coordinator too,
Hmm.
because Patricia hired Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
there two interesting caveat too is again, if Bill doesn't turn it around completely year one where they're in the playoffs, there's two bowl games that the ACC plays in. There's the Mayo Bowl, and then there's the Holiday Bowl, where the Mayo Bowl, if you win, the winning coach gets a Gatorade bucket of mayo poured over them. And if you win the Holiday Bowl, you get a Gatorade bucket of eggnog poured over you. So it'd be very interesting to see that happen to Bill. But
yeah, what's the Pop-Tart one? Is that a
uh,
different conference?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I know Boston Connor tweeted that out as a joke. Again, I don't
Yeah.
know if ACC's in that one or not. I don't remember.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that. That'll be interesting to see if he gets to be the one to fry the Pop-Tart.
Yeah.
All right, I think we already gave kind of our overall thoughts. I think one big question is what does this really say about other NFL teams? Why they don't want to hire Bill, or
I think
why this may not be a right
it
situation?
it shows that they're not truly invested in winning. It really does. Like again, you can argue if Bill the GM versus Bill the coach, but I don't think you can really have any negatives to say about Bill the head coach the last few years. It was more the GM aspect. But if you're an NFL owner, even if you don't want to give him the power of GM, you at least bring him in to see he's going to be an upgrade over I think every coach in the NFL, maybe you can make arguments one or two here or there, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, depending on the team that you want. But you at least bring him in to see maybe he's the right fit and maybe Bill is comfortable not being the GM or not having the personnel power. But to not even bring him in for the Falcons, for instance, again, he's the only team that he interviewed with, but all
Hmm.
three are all members of the personnel or that gave their advice to Arthur Blank didn't have Bill Belichick in their top three coaching candidates just shows it's pathetic, to be
And
honest.
in those situations too, it shows just how much people care about their own job
Yeah,
versus actually trying to win, and they're
yeah,
afraid of their own job getting lost and having these nice cushy jobs get fired from them when they're just looking for self-preservation. And you look at the
yeah,
Falcons right now; they're nothing right now.
yeah.
They're
That,
not.
and then you see other teams where the Titans fired Mike Vrabel because they wanted to take over. their team. And then the
Hmm.
Titans are one of the worst teams in football this year, even though they beat the Patriots, which what does that say about the Patriots? But other teams where their owners' sons are in the analytic department, like the
Hmm.
Jaguars, or you could argue Jerry Jones with the Cowboys and his son with the Cowboys. It's a
You have the
lot of
Jets where the
yeah,
owner's was it grandson or something or nephew is like an 18-year-old kid is basically running the GM search.
yeah.
Um, it
So
just
it shows that they're not interested in winning. They're more interested in their power and possibly control, or as someone I know put it, essentially running their own fantasy football team, essentially.
mhm. No, agreed. And it shows that again, there's some situations you could say it wouldn't make sense to have Bill be your head coach. If
Yeah,
you're like if you look at the Panthers and you need to completely build up this team,
yeah,
like are you going to hire a 73-year-old guy to do that?
yeah.
I don't think
Es-
Bill would want to do it, and I don't
yeah,
think it would make
especially with that
sense.
owner. But the Saints too, where their cap space, it doesn't
Oh yeah,
make
the
sense for
Saints it
Bill.
doesn't make sense because
Maybe from their perspective, if Bill can get them out of cap hell. But
hmm
again, it's his GM aspect, which a lot of teams he kind of was fired, but again, that's also partially because of Robert Kraft forcing him to or taking away his powers, etc.
hmm
But again, I don't like that he's not in the NFL, but I do really like the spot he landed in, as much as
hmm
I didn't like it last week.
Yep. No, great. I think I don't think there's really much else to say other than
Yeah.
it's a disgrace that a lot of these teams wouldn't want him in their building.
Yeah, and again,
And
I understand if you're hiring like Mike Vrabel over him, where you think you're getting Vrabel for 10, 15 years, or Brian Flores, or you want to go offense instead of defense
Mhm.
because, again,
And then even too this if you're not close enough to be winning,
yeah,
where
yeah,
mm, realistically you'd probably be winning like in his like last year. That
yeah.
wouldn't make sense because like you're doing
Like
all that
the
to just
Commanders,
redo it.
yeah, the Commanders last year. Again, I don't think any of us expected them to turn around this quickly, but they didn't have a quarterback, they didn't have a defense, they didn't have an offensive line. Like it didn't make sense for them to bring in Bill, and it didn't make sense for Bill to go there just because it looked like it was going to be a long building place.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I don't get it. I really don't. At least
Hmm.
interview the guy to see maybe then you feel like he's just not the right fit for what you're trying to do. You want to go
Hmm.
offense, you go with Mike Vrabel or Brian Flores or Ben Johnson.
Hmm.
But I don't know.
And then too, the fact that Vrabel wasn't hired last year was a disgrace. The fact that he was
Yeah,
fired was a disgrace,
yeah,
and the fact that he wasn't hired for the Patriots was a disgrace. And again, like I know we say that all the time, but like he's the perfect coaching candidate
yeah,
that was out there. He's
yeah,
basically what you're looking for in Bill, but younger.
yeah,
Not maybe not as good, but a younger version of Bill. And he has those same things. He knows a lot. He's very smart. He can relate to players. It's just a disgrace that he was never hired last year.
yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
all right. I mentioned Brian. I was gonna follow him. All right. I think that's probably it for any Bill stuff. Anything else you want to talk about before we go on to the five
Nope.
questions?
Just interested to see what happens with him. Definitely going to be rooting for him and hope he has success. Really hope he finds a way to win a national title. Again, am I expecting him to? Probably not, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Do I think he can make it to the playoffs by the time he's done coaching? I think he can. I
I think he will. I'm
yeah, I think
gonna
he will
say
too.
that he will be in the college playoff within by season two.
Yeah,
I would not
I'd
be
agree.
shocked if they win one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to say that it's 50 plus
I wouldn't
percent
predict them
likelihood.
winning one just because there's so many teams now in it that
Yeah,
it's much harder than it was.
but I think maybe I'm a homer, but I think 20% chance at least makes it to a national title.
The thing too is just different is that
We don't know.
we don't know
Yeah,
what players he's gonna get, and
yeah,
that's the thing. It's completely different than before because he could easily say, "I'm Bill Belichick. If you want your son or daughter, oh not your daughter, if you want your son to get into the NFL,
yeah,
come to me."
yeah,
And everyone they'll learn more than they will under any other college coach,
yeah.
and he could be getting top recruits everywhere. He could be
Yeah, I
turning
mean,
this into
even
Georgia. He could be turning it
Deion
into
Sanders got Travis Hunter to go when they were D1 FCS, FBS,
hmm
FCS. what used to be D1 AA. He went from D1, I forgot which school, but he went to D1 AA just because of Prime and then followed Prime to
Hmm.
Colorado.
Yeah.
And he was the
So
number one prospect in all of high school.
yeah, and like right now, everyone says like Georgia, Alabama, those schools they're supposed to be like basically like NFL light.
Yeah.
There's no reason why this couldn't be it too, even though
Yeah.
he's in the ACC.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Five questions on the NFL. Rank the rookie quarterbacks. So re-rank them from what you had originally. Have you changed your mind on Bo Nix?
Are we talking their entire career or are we talking this season?
How about redraft the rookie
Okay.
quarterbacks, and then have you changed your mind on Bo Nix?
I would go Drake May one. I'd still go Caleb two just because I think he has a talent, but he has to get the right coaching staff. I'd go Jaden three. I know Jaden's had a better year, but I still worry about if he can hold up long term. Uh, I'll go my man Michael Penix number four, and then I'd still probably go JJ McCarthy five and Bo Nix six.
Oh God. All right.
Let me explain why. So if you look at Bo Nix's stats compared to Mac Jones his rookie year, his stats are actually worse than Mac Jones was his rookie year. I think he's Mac Jones light, which is what I compared him to, where I said his ceiling was Mac Jones's rookie year. And again, it's kind of lining up that way. He found a coach that has an offense that fits his style, but I don't see him being tremendously successful. Like maybe he could be like Jared Goff if he has like receivers around him and a good offensive line, but I don't see him being a top 5, 10 quarterback in the NFL, even though he's having a good year.
All right, so I'll start by saying we're talking about Bo Nix, and then I'll give my re-ranking. I think my opinion changed on him a little bit. I think coming out of the draft, I think he could be. I think I remember saying that looking at him, he looked like Mac Jones, but with a better arm and being more athletic. And I think just seeing the clips that he has, especially there's that throw, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. It was that like 50-yard throw, and it was very similar to that Cowboys throw that Mac Jones had.
Yeah.
But this one just had way more like oomph, like on the
Yeah.
ball than the Mac Jones one. The Mac Jones one, realistically, if you rewatch it and you're actually objective now,
Yeah.
like that should have been picked off.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one it just had a little bit more on it. He's more athletic, he's bigger, he's more muscular, he's stronger.
Yeah.
He
I mean,
can
he's
run a little
also
bit
like
more.
3 years older, but
Yeah. So I think I think Jared Goff is a really good kind of line for him. I think he got really lucky by where he went. I think he's the
yeah,
perfect kind of quarterback for
agreed.
Sean Payton. And then it also makes me wonder like how good was Drew Brees actually? Was Drew Brees just really good for Sean Payton?
No, Drew,
Um,
Drew Brees was good with the Chargers too before his injury.
mhm. But no, that's what I meant. Like, would he have been as good?
Probably
Like after
not,
the injury and not
but he
having
still
Sean
would.
Payton.
I think he still would have been a top five
Mhm.
quarterback, but maybe not to the caliber he was.
Yeah. So, ranking them is the difficult part because Bo Nix,
Yeah.
I think, needs that. I think he needs the Sean Payton. He needs
Yeah.
a kind of
Agreed.
offensive guy.
Yep.
Like you see with Sam Darnold with the Vikings. I think he needs that type of kind of coach where
Yep.
we both, I think, I don't really remember what you thought, but I remember I really liked Sam Darnold. Even when he got traded to the Panthers, I was like, I would have taken a flyer on him
Yeah.
because he's athletic, he's strong, he's got a really good arm.
And he was
Um,
really young when he was drafted too. I think he was only
mhm.
like 20.
He's still, I think, younger than some of the guys that were drafted this year, wasn't he? Isn't he younger than Penix?
Probably around that age. Penix is 24, so Sam Darnold's probably
Um,
around 24, 25.
yeah. So ranking them, I'll go Jaden Daniels, number one. Drake May, number
Ranking as
two.
if you were to a organization you were drafting
To
them.
redraft them.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Because Daniels still right now is more of the total package where May and I don't fully blame him on this. But he still has a bunch of those same mistakes that you saw in college.
Yeah,
And until he gets rid of them, I don't know for certain that he will. I
that's
think he
fair.
will.
Yep.
But I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say he will.
Yep.
So I'll go Jane Daniels, then Drake May. And this is what gets tricky. because it depends on really what coach you're getting and what it
Yeah.
is. I still believe what I thought going into the draft that Williams is going to flame out and he's going to be Zach Wilson 2.0. So I'm going to say three is Bo Nix, four is JJ McCarthy, five is Penix, six is Williams.
All right. Interesting.
All right. Which rookie quarterback, Nix or Daniels, will go far in the playoffs this year?
I think they both get bounced round one.
I do too. So that wasn't a great question by me.
No, it wasn't.
Where will Vrabel be coaching next year? This is a really interesting one.
I think if the Eagles move on from Sirianni, which I don't think they will, if they do, I think he's going to coach the Eagles. If they don't, probably the Cowboys. If they move on from McCarthy, there aren't going to be a grade of options. Maybe the Jaguars, but I say Cowboys or Jaguars if Eagles aren't available.
Um, I think the Eagles. I think Sirianni's going to lose first round, like he
Yeah,
usually does, and then he'll be coaching there. Next one is where should Vrabel be coaching? This is, I think, the better question.
I say the Bears if he brings in an offensive coordinator like Josh.
hmm Um, I think so. I've got two answers for this, so it's not a great
You
one,
have the
but
Patriots, I know.
I so I have the Patriots with Vrabel being the coach and Josh McDaniels being the offensive
Yeah,
coordinator. It
I'd
sets you
be,
up for 15 years where you
yeah,
have a defensive-minded coach still, and then you have an offense coordinator that you know can't go away because no one's going to hire him to be a head coach ever again.
yeah.
So he's not going to take a job elsewhere. And you basically have the two tandems. You have a defensive guy, you have an offensive guy, and you'll be in kind of a great condition going forward, and they're not going to have it in the following year when they fire Mayo. Um,
I still think Mayo
where
goes 3 years, but
where should Vrabel go? I think if you're counting out the Patriots, he should go to Buffalo. They should fire
I
McDermott,
they
and then they
should, but
should
they're
hire
not going
Vrabel.
to.
They're not.
Yeah,
That's why I said should.
yeah,
They should fire McDermott and then hire him because they're never going to win McDermott because he can't in-game manage.
yep. No, agreed.
Last question: where's Josh McDaniels going to end up? This is also a very interesting question.
I have the Houston Texans as their offensive coordinator with Bobby Slowick taking a head coaching job somewhere.
Oh, that's a really good answer
Yep.
because his brother.
His brother's there, and then Casero's the GM who was his college teammate and worked with him for 20 something years.
Oh fuck, I didn't think of that. Um, I think he's gonna be in. He's gonna be the Ernie Adams role to Bill Belichick.
I don't know if I see that, but maybe if Matty
I
P
just
has,
want him to be involved with Bill somehow.
yeah,
But
no, I do too. Apparently, according to the Wickersham article, McDaniels has been in the
the
weekly
weekly
meetings,
meetings with
which
Bill.
some people might have been surprised because McDaniels did the same exact thing to Bill the second go around where he took half his staff and half his front office. So people thought maybe he burned bridges again, but it looks like he at least had the blessings for that
hmm
this time.
All right. Last thing, Arizona Cardinals. We'll just give our predictions. Everyone knows about the Cardinals. You got Kyler Murray, you got Marvin Harrison Jr. The head coach was a former defensive coordinator for the Eagles before.
Yeah.
So Cardinals are favored by 6 points
You also have a
over.
really, really, really good tight end in Trey McBride, who
hmm
the Patriots have been very bad at guarding tight ends this year, with
hmm
Duggar being part of the issue on that. You have a really good running back in James Conner. Um, Offensive line is okay. On the defensive side of the ball, you got our favorite Mac Wilson, who I really wanted the Patriots to re-sign. He's been balling out this year for the Cardinals. You also have September Special Teams Player of the Month, Chad Ryland as their kicker. So a lot of Patriot ties or some Patriot ties. Also Marvin Harrison with them doing their homework on him this offseason, getting ready for the draft. Should be an interesting game. It's a game that they theoretically could win. It's a must win for the Cardinals if they want to make the playoffs. They're 2 games back of Seattle for the division lead. So if they want to make the playoffs, they have to win this game. So they have everything to play for. Patriots don't, other than pride. But should be interesting. Patriots could win, but I don't. We'll get into predictions, but I'm not expecting them to. You go ahead first, Kevin.
All right. The Patriots have typically always had issues with Kyler Murray type of quarterback. In particular, too, Kyler Murray before, and they ended up getting hurt in the game when they faced him the last time. So I'm gonna go that the Cardinals are gonna win. They're going to win 27 to 18.
18. Interesting number.
Yeah.
I have the Cardinals winning 34 to, I guess 20, 34-20, but it's not going to be as close as the score says.
Okay. All right. So that's all we got. Thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. And then follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Pat's 300 Level Pod. And just be on the lookout again for some TikToks as well. Follow us on there and look forward to talking to you guys next time.